What if the woman who knows her worth doesn't need to chase attention, prove herself, or beg to be chosen? She moves differently because she understands something most people learn too late. Your value doesn't increase when someone notices you. In this speech, I'll reveal 10 secret habits of women who truly know their worth, habits that build confidence, protect peace, and change the way you show up in every relationship. If you're ready to stop seeking approval and start choosing yourself, watch until the end. Like this video and subscribe for more powerful motivation. A woman who truly knows her worth does not wake up every morning wondering whether other people approve of her. She may appreciate compliments, enjoy encouragement, and value the opinions of people she respects. She does not allow those opinions to determine how she feels about herself. There is a difference between listening to others and needing others to tell you who you are. When a woman stops seeking validation, she begins to build something far more powerful than popularity, self-trust. For years, many women are taught to measure themselves through outside reactions. Am I attractive enough? Am I successful enough? Does he still like me? Do people respect me? Did I say the right thing? Why didn't they respond? Why did someone else receive more attention? These questions can quietly become a habit, and before long, a woman can spend more time monitoring other people's reactions than understanding her own needs, values, and desires. But a woman who knows her worth begins to turn those questions around. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" she asks, "Do I like who I am when I'm around them?" Instead of asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" she asks, "Would I choose this situation for myself if I wasn't afraid of being alone?" Instead of asking, "How can I make them appreciate me?" she asks, "Are they showing me that they already appreciate what I bring?" Those questions shift the center of power back to her. She realizes that validation can feel good. It cannot become the foundation of her identity. Someone can compliment her today and criticize her tomorrow. Someone can admire her and later misunderstand her. Someone can choose her and eventually change their mind. If her confidence depends on those reactions, she will constantly feel unstable. But when she develops an internal sense of worth, outside opinions become information rather than instructions. She can hear criticism and decide whether there is something useful in it without automatically believing she is a failure. She can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. She can experience rejection without deciding that she is unworthy of love. She can make a mistake without turning one mistake into a definition of her entire personality. She begins to understand that being imperfect does not make her less valuable. This is where real confidence starts. Confidence is not walking into every room believing that everyone will admire you. Confidence is knowing that even if they don't, you will still respect yourself. It is knowing that you can survive being misunderstood. It is knowing that you can handle someone saying no. It is knowing that you can walk away from situations that don't honor you. It is knowing that you don't have to become smaller just because someone else is uncomfortable with your growth. A woman who trusts herself also becomes more comfortable making decisions. She doesn't need to ask 10 people what she should do every time life presents a difficult choice. She can seek advice, listen carefully, consider different perspectives, and then make a decision based on her own values. She understands that other people can offer guidance, but they cannot live the consequences of her choices for her. She also stops explaining herself unnecessarily. If she chooses a career path that others don't understand, she doesn't spend her entire life defending it. If she needs distance from a relationship that drains her, she doesn't need everyone to agree with her decision. If she wants to spend time alone, she doesn't have to apologize for needing space. She understands that not every personal decision requires a public explanation. This doesn't mean she becomes selfish. In fact, knowing her worth often makes her more generous because she no longer gives from desperation. She can help someone without needing to be praised for it. She can love someone without expecting them to complete her. She can support her friends without competing with them. She can celebrate another woman's success without feeling that someone else's success takes something away from her. She begins to understand that there is enough room for other women to shine without dimming her own light. She can see another woman who is more successful, more confident, or more accomplished, and use that as inspiration instead of evidence that she is behind. Comparison becomes less powerful because her focus shifts from proving that she is better than someone else to becoming better than the woman she was yesterday. She also becomes careful about the people she allows to influence her self-image. If someone repeatedly makes her feel inadequate, confused, or unworthy, she pays attention. She doesn't automatically assume that every negative feeling is someone else's fault, but she looks at patterns. She asks whether the relationship encourages growth or constantly creates insecurity. She asks whether the person respects her boundaries or only appreciates her. When she is easy to control, a woman who knows her worth understands that being wanted is not the same as being valued. Attention is not always respect. Chemistry is not always compatibility. Words are not always commitment. She looks at consistency. She watches whether someone's behavior matches what they say. She notices whether she feels peaceful or constantly anxious around them. She refuses to make excuses for patterns that repeatedly hurt her simply because she wants the relationship to work. The more she trusts herself, the less desperate she becomes for external approval. She can walk into a room without wondering whether she is the most attractive person there. She can speak without constantly rehearsing how everyone might react. She can wear what makes her feel comfortable. She can pursue goals that matter to her. She can say no without feeling like she has committed a crime. She can leave conversations that become disrespectful instead of fighting to prove her point, and slowly, something changes in her presence. She becomes calmer because she is no longer constantly performing for acceptance. She becomes clearer because she knows what matters to her. She becomes stronger because she stops abandoning herself whenever someone disagrees with her. She becomes more selective because she understands that access to her time, energy, and attention should mean something. She doesn't need to announce that she knows her worth. Her behavior communicates it. The way she responds to disrespect communicates it. The way she handles rejection communicates it. The way she chooses relationships communicates it. The way she protects her time communicates it. The way she continues growing when nobody is watching communicates it. And perhaps the most powerful part is that she no longer needs to be chosen by everyone. She understands that not every person will recognize her value, and that doesn't automatically make her less valuable. A diamond does not become less precious because someone doesn't know how to recognize it. In the same way, her worth does not disappear because someone fails to appreciate her. She stops chasing the approval that was never meant to define her. She stops changing herself to fit every expectation. She stops measuring her life through likes, compliments, attention, or relationship status. She starts measuring it through integrity, growth, peace, courage, discipline, promises she keeps to herself every time she chooses herself with wisdom rather than ego. She strengthens her identity. Every time she respects a boundary, she teaches herself that her needs matter. Every time she walks away from disrespect, she proves that loneliness is not worse than self-abandonment. Every time she continues toward a goal without applause, she builds evidence that her motivation does not have to come from other people. She begins living from the inside out rather than the outside in, allowing her decisions to come from what she believes instead of what she fears others might think. And as that inner trust grows, she becomes less interested in convincing the world that she is worthy and more committed to living in a way that makes her proud of the woman she is becoming. Even when nobody is watching, nobody is applauding, and nobody is there to tell her that she is doing a good job, a woman who knows her worth understands that protecting her peace is not selfish. It is necessary. She knows that her emotional energy is valuable, and she cannot allow every person, every argument, every opinion, every problem to have unlimited access to her mind. She has learned that peace is not about creating a life where nothing ever goes wrong. It is about becoming strong enough to decide what deserves her attention and what does not for a long time. She may have believed that being a good woman meant always being available. She answered every message, solved everyone's problems, listened to every complaint, and said yes even when she desperately wanted to say no. She thought keeping everyone happy was a sign of kindness. Eventually, she realized that constantly abandoning herself to keep other people comfortable was not kindness toward herself, so she starts creating boundaries. She learns to say no without feeling guilty. She doesn't need to create a complicated explanation every time she cannot do something. She can simply say, "I can't," or "that doesn't work for me," and allow the other person to have their reaction. She understands that someone being disappointed does not automatically mean she has done something wrong. This is a difficult lesson because some people become comfortable with the version of you that has no boundaries. They become accustomed to your constant availability, your immediate replies, your endless patience, and your willingness to adjust everything for them. When you begin protecting your time, they may tell you that you've changed, and sometimes changing is exactly what growth looks like. A woman who knows her worth watches how people respond when she establishes a boundary. Someone who respects her may not always agree with her decision, but they can accept it. Someone who wants control may respond with guilt, pressure, anger, or emotional manipulation. She doesn't automatically fight. She observes, she learns. She pays attention to patterns rather than getting distracted by temporary words. She also realizes that not every conversation deserves her energy. There are arguments that lead to understanding, and there are arguments that exist only to create exhaustion. She becomes wise enough to recognize the difference. She doesn't feel obligated to respond to every negative comment, defend herself against every accusation, or prove her intentions to someone committed to misunderstanding her. Sometimes protecting your peace means choosing silence. Not because you are afraid to speak, but because you understand that your attention is valuable. You don't have to attend every emotional battle simply because someone invited you into it. She becomes intentional about what she consumes as well. She notices how certain social media accounts affect her confidence. She notices how constant negativity changes her mood. She notices how spending time around people who complain about everything slowly influences her own thinking. She becomes selective about what enters her mind. She chooses conversations that inspire her. She spends time with people who encourage growth. She gives herself moments of quiet where she can think without outside noise. She understands that solitude is not always loneliness. Sometimes solitude is where clarity begins. Protecting her peace also changes her relationships. She understands that loving someone does not mean accepting every behavior from them. She can care about someone and still say, "This is not acceptable to me." She can forgive without giving unlimited access. She can understand someone's difficult circumstances without allowing those circumstances to become an excuse for repeatedly hurting her. She stops confusing compassion with responsibility. She can support someone without becoming responsible for their entire emotional world. She can listen without absorbing every problem. She can care without carrying everything, and this makes her emotionally stronger. Someone else's bad mood no longer automatically becomes her responsibility. Someone else's anger doesn't immediately make her question herself. Someone's disappointment doesn't force her to change her boundaries. She learns to pause before reacting because she understands that emotional control is one of the strongest forms of personal power. The more she protects her peace, the more clearly she can hear herself. She starts recognizing what she actually wants. She notices which relationships feel healthy and which ones constantly leave her drained. She becomes more aware of what she will accept, what she will tolerate temporarily, and what she will never allow to become normal. Her peace becomes a standard rather than a luxury. She doesn't need a perfect life to feel peaceful. She needs alignment. She needs to know that the people around her respect her, that her choices reflect her values, and that she isn't constantly betraying herself just to maintain relationships that no longer serve her. And eventually, she realizes that boundaries do not push the right people away. They reveal who respects her enough to stay without controlling her. The people who genuinely value her may appreciate her honesty, understand her need for space, and respect her decisions even when they don't get what they want. While the people who only benefited from her lack of boundaries may slowly disappear, leaving her with fewer distractions, more clarity, and the freedom to build a life where her peace is protected not because she has stopped caring about people, because she has finally learned that caring for others should never require her to stop caring for herself. A woman who knows her worth stops chasing people and starts choosing relationships, opportunities, and environments that genuinely deserve her energy. She understands that there is a difference between showing interest and constantly trying to earn someone's attention. She can care deeply, communicate honestly, and make an effort, but she refuses to carry an entire relationship by herself, while the other person simply watches. For many women, chasing begins quietly. It may look like constantly checking the phone, sending another message when someone hasn't responded, trying to keep a conversation alive, making excuses for inconsistent behavior, or changing themselves to become more appealing. Sometimes it looks like accepting less because they are afraid that asking for more will make someone leave. The problem is not caring. The problem begins when caring requires you to abandon yourself. A woman who knows her worth begins to ask a different question. Instead of asking, "How can I make this person choose me?" she asks, "Are their actions showing me that they already want to choose me?" That simple shift changes everything because she stops trying to control someone else's feelings and starts paying attention to reality. She watches consistency. She notices whether someone makes time for her without being repeatedly asked. She notices whether their words match their actions. She notices whether effort is mutual. She notices whether she feels respected, appreciated, and emotionally safe. She doesn't become obsessed with analyzing every small detail, but she pays attention to patterns because patterns reveal more than promises. This doesn't mean she plays games. She doesn't deliberately ignore messages to create mystery. She doesn't pretend not to care. She doesn't try to make someone jealous. She doesn't manipulate attention. Her power comes from authenticity. She can express interest without becoming dependent on the outcome. She can be vulnerable without becoming desperate. She can love someone without making that person responsible for her self-worth. When she stops chasing, she creates space for the truth to become visible. If someone genuinely wants a relationship with her, they have room to step forward. If someone only stayed because she was doing all the work, their lack of effort becomes obvious. That clarity may hurt, but she understands that knowing the truth is healthier than living inside endless uncertainty. She also learns that rejection is not always a loss. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes someone not choosing you protects you from spending years trying to convince them of your value. Sometimes a door closing forces you to notice that you were standing at the wrong door. In the first place, a woman who knows her worth doesn't beg someone to stay. She doesn't threaten. She doesn't create drama just to receive reassurance. She can communicate her needs clearly. She also understands that another person's choice is outside her control. If someone consistently shows her that they don't want to meet her halfway, she doesn't keep running toward them hoping that more effort will change their mind. She chooses herself. This mindset applies beyond romantic relationships. She stops chasing friendships where she is always the one initiating. She stops chasing opportunities that repeatedly undervalue her. She stops chasing approval from people who only appreciate her when she is useful to them. She begins investing her energy where there is reciprocity, respect, and genuine interest, and something powerful happens when she starts choosing instead of chasing. Her standards become clearer. Her time becomes more valuable. Her decisions become calmer. She doesn't rush into relationships simply because she is lonely. She doesn't accept opportunities simply because someone finally noticed her. She doesn't confuse attention with compatibility. She asks, does this fit the life I am building? She asks, does this relationship bring peace or constant confusion? She asks, am I being respected here? She asks, would I still choose this if I wasn't afraid of losing it? These questions protect her from making decisions based purely on fear. She understands that being chosen feels good. Choosing wisely is more important. Anyone can want your attention for a moment. The real question is whether they can consistently respect your values, your boundaries, your time, and your future. That is why a woman who knows her worth becomes magnetic without trying to be. She doesn't chase because she has a life to return to. She doesn't beg because she understands that genuine connection cannot be forced. She doesn't compete because she knows that what is truly aligned with her will not require her to destroy her self-respect to keep it. She becomes more selective, not because she thinks she is better than everyone else, but because she finally understands that her energy has limits. She cannot give her best to every person who enters her life. She cannot build meaningful goals while constantly running after people who give her mixed signals. She cannot protect her future if she keeps sacrificing it for temporary attention, so she stops running after what keeps moving away and starts building what moves toward her. She develops herself. She strengthens her confidence. She creates meaningful friendships. She pursues her goals. She protects her peace. She becomes so engaged with her own growth that attention becomes something she appreciates rather than something she needs, allowing her to remain open to love and connection, while still knowing that the right relationship will meet her with effort, respect, consistency, genuine intention, rather than leaving her exhausted from constantly trying to prove why she should be chosen. A woman who knows her worth understands that attention is not the same as respect, and being wanted is not the same as being valued. She may enjoy affection, compliments, and romantic interest. She never allows those things to become the price of her self-respect. She knows that when someone genuinely values her, she should not have to beg for basic consideration, chase communication, or repeatedly explain why she deserves to be treated well. She begins to recognize the difference between asking for what she needs and begging someone to give it to her. Asking is healthy. Begging is exhausting. She can communicate her expectations clearly, but she doesn't repeatedly convince someone to respect them. If she has explained what she needs and the other person consistently chooses not to provide it, she pays attention to that behavior instead of continuing to negotiate against herself. This changes the way she responds to relationships. She doesn't measure love by how intensely someone speaks about her. She watches how consistently they treat her. Someone can send beautiful messages and still be unreliable. Someone can say they care and still ignore her boundaries. Someone can make promises and still repeatedly disappoint her. She learns to look beyond words and observe patterns. She also stops believing that demanding respect makes her difficult. A woman with standards is not automatically demanding. Wanting honesty, consistency, communication, kindness, and mutual effort is not asking for perfection. She understands that healthy relationships require two people who are willing to contribute, communicate, and respect each other's needs. When someone treats her poorly, she doesn't immediately turn inward and ask, "What is wrong with me?" She asks, "Is this behavior acceptable to me?" That question is powerful because it separates another person's behavior from her identity. Someone's inability to appreciate her does not automatically mean she lacks value. She also learns that not every situation deserves a second chance. Forgiveness can be beautiful, but forgiveness does not require unlimited access. She can forgive someone and still choose distance. She can understand why someone behaved badly without deciding that she must tolerate the same behavior again. She can have compassion without abandoning her standards. A woman who knows her worth also understands that begging for attention creates the wrong kind of relationship. If someone only becomes interested when she threatens to leave, disappears, or becomes emotionally distant, she begins to question whether the connection is based on genuine care or fear of losing access to her. She doesn't want someone who values her only when she is leaving. She wants someone who recognizes her value while she is present. This doesn't mean she expects perfection. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has difficult days. Everyone can communicate poorly sometimes. The difference is whether the person takes responsibility and makes a genuine effort to improve. She looks for accountability rather than excuses. She also stops chasing explanations from people who have already shown her their answer through their actions. Sometimes you don't need another conversation. Sometimes the pattern is the conversation. If someone repeatedly disappears, repeatedly breaks promises, repeatedly ignores your boundaries, and repeatedly makes you question your place in their life, she doesn't need to keep asking for clarity. She can accept what the behavior is telling her. That acceptance can be difficult because sometimes the heart wants a different answer. But a woman who knows her worth learns to respect reality even when reality is disappointing. She understands that holding on to potential can keep her trapped in a relationship with what someone might become, instead of accepting what they are actually choosing to be. She also stops competing for attention. She doesn't see another woman as an enemy simply because someone she likes finds that woman attractive. She doesn't believe she needs to prove that she is prettier, smarter, or more interesting. She understands that genuine connection is not a competition where the highest bidder wins. The right person doesn't need to be convinced through comparison, and this gives her freedom. She can walk away without creating a dramatic scene. She can say, "This doesn't work for me," and mean it. She can choose peace over another argument. She can choose distance over disrespect. She can choose herself without needing everyone to understand her decision. Her standards become visible through her actions. She doesn't need to announce, "I deserve respect." She simply stops participating in situations where respect is consistently absent. She doesn't need to announce, "I value myself." She makes choices that demonstrate it. Eventually, she realizes that one of the most powerful forms of confidence is knowing when to stop asking for something that should be freely given. She no longer begs for attention because she understands that genuine interest creates effort. She no longer begs for respect because respect should exist without repeated demands. She no longer begs someone to stay because love that requires constant begging can never give her the security she is looking for. And as she becomes more comfortable walking away from what repeatedly diminishes her, she creates space for relationships where affection is mutual, communication is natural, boundaries are respected, and her presence is appreciated without her having to fight every day to prove that she deserves a place there. A woman who knows her worth understands that investing in herself is one of the strongest ways to build confidence. She does not wait for someone else to tell her that she deserves a better life. She does not need permission to grow, learn, improve, or pursue the things that matter to her. She realizes that the relationship she has with herself influences every other relationship in her life. She begins treating herself like someone worth investing in. She stops putting herself last all the time. She may still care for her family, support her friends, and show up for the people she loves, but she no longer believes that self-sacrifice is the only proof of love. She understands that constantly giving everything away while leaving nothing for herself eventually creates exhaustion, resentment, and emotional emptiness. She begins making room for her own needs without feeling guilty about it. She invests in her mind. She reads, learns, asks questions, develops new skills, and challenges old beliefs. She doesn't pretend to know everything. She understands that intelligent people remain curious. She allows herself to change her perspective when new information teaches her something valuable. She becomes more interested in growth than in appearing perfect. She invests in her health. She takes care of her body not because she needs to look a certain way to be accepted, but because she wants energy, strength, and confidence. She learns that caring for herself is not vanity. It is a form of respect. She gets enough rest when possible, moves her body, pays attention to what makes her feel well, and creates routines that support the woman she wants to become. She also invests in her emotional growth. Instead of blaming everyone else for how she feels, she begins examining her own patterns. She asks why certain situations trigger her. She learns to communicate instead of expecting people to read her mind. She becomes more comfortable sitting with uncomfortable emotions instead of immediately escaping them. She understands that emotional maturity does not mean never feeling hurt, angry, jealous, or afraid. It means learning how to respond to those emotions without allowing them to control every decision. She also stops measuring her progress through other people's achievements. Another woman's success doesn't make her less successful. Another woman's beauty doesn't make her less beautiful. Another woman's relationship doesn't mean she is behind. She understands that everyone has a different timeline, and comparison often distracts her from the work that belongs to her. So she asks herself, what can I improve today? Maybe it is her communication. Maybe it is her confidence. Maybe it is her finances. Maybe it is her career. Maybe it is her relationships. Maybe it is simply learning how to rest without feeling guilty. She focuses on progress. Instead of perfection, she also becomes comfortable growing quietly. She doesn't need to announce every goal she has. She doesn't need to tell everyone about every transformation. Some of the most important changes in her life happen when nobody is watching. She studies when nobody applauds. She works on herself when nobody notices. She keeps going when motivation disappears. That private discipline becomes powerful because it creates self-trust. Every time she keeps a promise to herself, she becomes more confident. Every time she follows through on something difficult, she proves that she can rely on herself. Every time she chooses long-term growth over temporary comfort, she becomes stronger. And the more she invests in herself, the less dependent she becomes on external validation. Compliments feel good, but she doesn't need them to feel beautiful. Attention feels exciting, but she doesn't need it to feel important. Praise feels encouraging, but she doesn't collapse when nobody applauds. She understands that her worth existed before anyone noticed her and will remain even when attention disappears. She also becomes more selective with her time. She stops spending hours trying to convince someone to care. She stops endlessly analyzing people who give her mixed signals. She stops wasting energy on relationships that constantly make her question herself. She realizes that every hour spent chasing approval is an hour she could have spent building her own future. This doesn't make her selfish. It makes her intentional. She can give to others without abandoning herself. She can love deeply without losing her identity. She can support someone else's dream while still pursuing her own. Eventually, her growth becomes visible in ways she doesn't need to explain. Her conversations become deeper. Her decisions become clearer. Her boundaries become stronger. Her confidence becomes quieter. Her standards become more intentional. She doesn't need to tell everyone that she has changed because the way she lives makes the change obvious. She understands that becoming a powerful woman is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming more honest with herself. It is about identifying what no longer serves her developing what makes her stronger, and having the courage to continue growing even when the process feels uncomfortable. And perhaps the most beautiful part is that she stops waiting for someone else to make her life meaningful. She builds meaning herself. She creates goals, develops passions, strengthens relationships, and gives herself permission to become the woman she wants to be. She no longer waits for someone to recognize her potential before she starts using it, because she has finally understood that the most important person who needs to believe in her future is the woman looking back at her in the mirror, choosing every day to invest in herself, respect herself, build a life that reflects the value she has always carried within her. A woman who knows her worth moves with quiet confidence because she no longer feels the need to prove herself in every room she enters. She doesn't need to be the loudest voice, the most noticeable person, or the one constantly demanding attention. Her confidence comes from within, from knowing who she is, what she values, and what she will and will not accept. She understands that true confidence is not about convincing everyone else that you are powerful, about becoming so secure in yourself that you no longer need constant approval. She can walk into a room where she knows nobody and still carry herself with calmness. She doesn't immediately compare herself with every woman she sees. She doesn't wonder whether someone is prettier, smarter, richer, or more successful. She reminds herself that another person's qualities do not remove anything from her own. She can appreciate someone else's strengths without turning them into evidence against herself. Quiet confidence also changes the way she speaks. She doesn't rush to fill every silence because she is afraid of being forgotten. She doesn't constantly interrupt because she needs to prove that her opinion matters. She chooses her words carefully and understands that speaking less can sometimes make her message more powerful. She listens, observes, then responds with intention. She also becomes comfortable saying, "I don't know." She doesn't pretend to have every answer. She understands that admitting uncertainty is not weakness. It is honesty. She can ask questions without feeling embarrassed. She can learn from someone younger than her. She can accept correction without feeling personally attacked. Her identity is not so fragile that one mistake can destroy it. A woman who knows her worth also learns to remain calm when someone disagrees with her. She doesn't automatically interpret disagreement as disrespect. She can listen to another perspective, decide whether it has value, and still hold her own position. She doesn't need everyone to think exactly like her to feel secure. This is one of the most powerful forms of confidence because it allows her to stop taking everything personally. Someone's rejection doesn't automatically mean she is inadequate. Someone's criticism doesn't automatically mean she is failing. One's lack of interest doesn't automatically mean she needs to change herself. She understands that people have different preferences, experiences, expectations, and limitations. She also understands that confidence is built through action. You don't become confident by repeating positive words while avoiding everything that scares you. You become confident by doing difficult things and discovering that you can survive the discomfort. You speak up even when your voice shakes. You set boundaries even when someone becomes upset. You try something new even when you might fail. You walk away from something unhealthy even when part of you wants to stay. Every one of those experiences teaches you that you can trust yourself, and self-trust creates a different kind of presence. She doesn't need to constantly check whether people approve of her because she has developed an internal standard. She asks herself whether she acted with integrity, whether she was honest, whether she respected herself, whether she treated others fairly, whether she learned something from the experience. She doesn't need to win every argument. She doesn't need the last word. She doesn't need to prove that she was right after someone has already decided not to understand her. Sometimes she chooses to let people believe whatever they want because protecting her peace matters more than controlling their opinion. This doesn't mean she becomes passive. When something truly matters, she speaks. When a boundary is crossed, she addresses it. When someone disrespects her, she responds appropriately. The difference is that she doesn't react from desperation. She responds from clarity. She also stops trying to appear perfect. She knows that perfection is exhausting because it requires constant performance. Instead, she chooses authenticity. She can admit when she made a mistake. She can apologize when she is wrong. She can change her mind when she learns something new. She can grow without feeling ashamed that she isn't the same person she was 5 years ago. And as she becomes more secure, she becomes less concerned with being liked by everyone. She understands that universal approval is impossible. If you try to satisfy every person, you will eventually lose yourself. Someone will dislike your boundaries. Someone will dislike your ambition. Someone will dislike your independence. Someone will dislike your opinions. Someone will dislike your silence. She doesn't make that her problem. She remains kind without becoming a people pleaser. She remains open without becoming easily influenced. She remains confident without becoming arrogant. She remains humble without making herself small. Her confidence becomes visible in the way she chooses her relationships, protects her time, handles criticism, and continues moving toward her goals even when nobody is cheering for her. She doesn't need to announce her worth because she lives as if she already knows it. And eventually, she realizes that the most magnetic confidence is not the confidence that demands attention. It is the confidence that doesn't need it. It is the ability to enter a room without asking to be noticed, to leave without wondering who approved of you, to speak without fearing disagreement, walk away without begging someone to understand, and to continue becoming stronger even when the applause disappears, because she has learned that the most important approval is the one she gives herself when she looks honestly at the woman she is becoming and knows that she is no longer living for permission, comparison, or validation, but for a life that reflects her values, her growth, her courage, and the self-respect she has chosen to build every single day. A woman who knows her worth builds a life that reflects her values instead of building her life around other people's expectations. She understands that self-worth becomes powerful when it shows up in the way she spends her time, chooses her relationships, pursues her goals, and responds to challenges. She doesn't simply say that she values herself. She creates a lifestyle that proves it. She begins by asking herself what kind of life she actually wants. Not the life that looks impressive on social media, not the life that makes other people jealous, and not the life that someone else designed for her. She asks what would make her feel fulfilled, peaceful, proud, alive. That question helps her separate her genuine desires from the expectations she has carried for years. She realizes that a meaningful life does not have to look the same for every woman. One woman may want a successful career. Another may want to build a business. Another may want to travel, create, study, raise a family, or focus on personal growth. The goal is not to copy someone else's definition of success. The goal is to create a life that feels honest to who she is. She stops waiting for someone else to complete the picture. She doesn't tell herself that happiness will begin when she finds the right partner, gets the perfect job, moves to the perfect place, or receives everyone's approval. She understands that relationships and achievements can add beauty to life, but they cannot become the only source of meaning. So she starts building now. She develops her skills. She takes care of her health. She manages her time more intentionally. She learns to handle money responsibly. She creates goals that excite her. She develops interests that have nothing to do with impressing anyone. She spends time with people who encourage her growth and distance herself from environments that constantly pull her backward. This creates independence, but not the kind that says, "I don't need anyone." Instead, it creates the healthier belief that she can love people deeply. Without becoming completely dependent on them for her identity, she can enjoy a relationship without losing her friendships. She can love someone without abandoning her career. She can support another person's dreams while continuing to pursue her own. She can spend time alone without feeling like her life has stopped. Her life has movement even when nobody is beside her. That is one of the most powerful qualities a woman can develop. She doesn't wait for company before she experiences life. She doesn't postpone her dreams because someone hasn't arrived yet. She doesn't keep her potential on hold because she is waiting for permission, encouragement, perfect circumstances. She understands that confidence grows when she keeps promises to herself. If she says she will work towards something, she takes action. If she wants to improve, she starts somewhere. If she makes a mistake, she learns. Instead of using the mistake as an excuse to quit, she also becomes intentional about the people around her. She understands that relationships can either strengthen her or slowly weaken her. So she chooses people who respect her boundaries, celebrate her growth, challenge her positively, and want to see her become better rather than smaller. She doesn't need a huge circle. She needs a meaningful one. She also learns to protect her attention. She understands that whatever receives her attention repeatedly begins shaping her life. She becomes more careful about what she watches, what she listens to, what conversations she participates in, and what opinions she allows to influence her decisions. She stops giving unlimited attention to drama. She stops allowing every notification to interrupt her focus. She stops spending hours analyzing people who have already shown her that they are inconsistent. She puts more energy into things that actually move her forward, and slowly her life begins to feel different. She becomes less desperate for attention because she has meaningful things to focus on. She becomes less afraid of being alone because she enjoys her own company. She becomes less concerned about comparison because she is busy building her own path. Her magnetism becomes a natural result of her alignment. She isn't pretending to be mysterious. She isn't playing hard to get. She isn't trying to make people chase her. She simply has a life that doesn't collapse when someone loses interest. She knows where she is going. She knows what she values. She knows what she will accept. She knows what she is working toward. And because she knows these things, she becomes more selective about who gets to walk beside her. She doesn't measure her success by how many people want her. She measures it by how much she respects the life she is creating. She doesn't ask whether everyone is impressed. She asks whether she is proud of the person she is becoming. That is the deeper meaning of knowing your worth. It isn't simply feeling confident when people compliment you. It is continuing to respect yourself when nobody is watching. It is choosing your goals when distractions are easier. It is protecting your peace when drama feels tempting. It is walking away from situations that repeatedly diminish you. It is choosing relationships that support your growth rather than requiring you to abandon yourself. And eventually, she realizes that the strongest life is not the one that looks perfect from the outside. It is the one that feels authentic from the inside. A life where her choices reflect her values, her relationships reflect her standards, her goals reflect her potential, and her daily actions reflect the respect she has developed for herself, creating a woman who doesn't need to chase attention because her energy is already invested in becoming someone she is proud to be, someone whose confidence comes from the life she has built rather than the approval she receives, and someone who can welcome love, success, friendship, and opportunity without ever forgetting that the foundation of everything she has is the relationship she has built with herself